the very latest. And then the news on Kyrie Irving becomes more and more of a concern. When is he coming back to Brooklyn, if ever at all? Answers to those and other questions as we get up with you starting right now on a Wednesday from the Seaport. Greeny Graziano is here with the very latest on the inside, and we've got plenty of acumen getting ready to go today. Dominique Foxworth is with us, and let's call D. Wood the maestro today, the piano virtuoso. If there's anything that I'm promising you, it is that someone will play that piano on television today. All that and more as we get this thing going. But we start with these maestros. Oh, the legendary quarterbacks on the field this weekend, beginning with Patrick Mahomes. He could make his third straight AFC Championship game with a win over the Browns on Sunday. He would be the fifth quarterback ever to make it to three straight AFC Championship games. Brady versus Brees, obviously, is the matchup of legends. We know 84 years of quarterback on the field there. And then Aaron Rodgers looking to make the NFC Championship game for the fifth time in his career. And as he spoke about it yesterday, you can tell he feels good about his chances.
I feel like we thought we could win it last year. That kind of hit our confidence maybe a little bit. We didn't maybe have the exact same type of belief. I feel like we have a lot of confidence this year. We believe in ourselves. Last year we were just so up and down. I think that's been the biggest difference offensively is we're playing with a lot more confidence.
Okay, so there's a lot to unpack about this, and clearly this is such an incredibly important game, an important run for his legacy. But Dan, I just want to start with you quickly. You covered their NFC Championship game a year ago when they got obliterated, and you're doing the game this weekend. How different do you see this Packer team from that one?
Yeah, I think what he's saying about confidence is true. And I remember talking to Matt LaFleur at the beginning of this year and asking him about Aaron Rodgers, and him telling me he loved where his state of mind was, that he felt like Rodgers was in the exact right place mentally going into this season. Obviously, the season has borne that out, and the confidence has only grown. So I think there was always a sense, this is LaFleur's second year, that the offense was something that was going to take some time to put together. I remember we talked about it on this show and others last year, but it's coming true. And I think we've seen the offense and Aaron Rodgers operate at a much higher level. As a result, I think they feel a lot better going into this game.
Isn't that fascinating, Dominique? Because we spoke so much about the psychology of Aaron Rodgers when they drafted his replacement and everything else. Now here he is in a great place. And let's talk about what another championship could mean for his legacy. He is an all-time great player, but a second championship might change a lot.
Yeah, I think that he might be under the most pressure. We talked about this a couple weeks ago because this is a legacy-defining, kind of legacy-elevating type of run for him in season. He could end up being the regular season MVP, get his second Super Bowl win, which then puts him on par with Manning and Elway. Also, potentially get a Super Bowl MVP. All that is great, but you put on top of it that he may have to go through Tom Brady or Drew Brees, and then potentially the young gun Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl that we all like to talk about as potentially being better than him. This is a thing that will change the way we think about him going forward. I know we all have a ton of respect for him now, but as time goes on, we get further and further away from his career. We're going to look at those numbers, and the numbers that we first look at, how many, for quarterbacks at least, how many Super Bowls did you win? And if he can get two like some of those other guys, I think it'll change the way that he is remembered.
I think that's right. We just saw Peyton Manning there, who won his second in his final year. John Elway, who won his two championships in the last 2 years of his career. What do you think it means to him, D. Wood?
Well, listen, I agree a lot with what Dominique said. I think when we think of Aaron Rodgers, to me, he's the most talented passer of the football of this generation. But you always look at his career and you would say, man, he's put up some eye-popping stats and all those type of things. But he only has one Super Bowl to account for all that back in 2011. Well, if he goes through this road and he beats these quarterbacks that are potentially lined up, and he wins the NFL MVP this year, to me now that elevates him in the line of where Peyton Manning is. That's where I think this whole postseason is shaping up for Aaron Rodgers.
What we'll talk about as we go, though, is he may have to get through Brady or Brees and then Mahomes, but getting through Aaron Donald this weekend might actually be the hardest of them all. We will get to that as we continue. Meanwhile, let's talk about the other NFC game, because you got Tampa and New Orleans, you got the legends, and the Buccaneers offense has been on an absolute roll of late, averaging just over 35 points and close to 500 yards over their last 5 games. However, against the Saints this year, it's been the opposite story. As you see, New Orleans held them to just 26 points total in their 2 meetings and just over 250 yards a game. So I can see this going one of two ways, Dominique. Those 5 games come since they had their bye. So maybe they've self-scouted and figured some stuff out, or maybe we could look at the competition that they've played, which has been less than outstanding, including in the playoff game last week, and sort of downplay that. What do you think the Buccaneers are looking at offensively this weekend?
Yeah, I think the Bucs have a big hill to climb offensively this weekend. Like, I lean more into the idea that they were playing against not great talent, then they figured it all out all of a sudden. Obviously, they have plenty of talented playmakers on that team. And obviously, any weekend they could potentially blow up, but they haven't done it against a top tier opponent like the Saints. And I haven't seen anything that suggests to me that things are going to change. It's really important, I think, for them to get out to a good start. That's what really killed them in their last game against the Saints, is they were under it before the game started, and it allowed the Saints defensive line to kind of get after Tom Brady. And I'm sure we all have heard ad nauseum that Tom Brady has stunk under pressure. But the one matchup that I think that we need to focus on is Gronk versus Jenkins on defense. Gronk is a guy that can get open quick, but when they've played against the Saints, Jenkins has pretty much bottled them up early in the game, and then it's gotten out of hand. So Gronk is going to have to find a way to get open, and I think Tom Brady is going to feel comfortable hitting him in those situations, and that potentially can open up the rest of the offense.
I like that thought. I also like the idea about them starting quickly, because Rex in particular has talked so much here about how effective they've been with play action. Well, if they get way behind and they can't run the ball, you don't get any of that. What do you think, D. Wood? The last time these teams played each other, it was 38-3 New Orleans. Why is this time going to be different?
Well, listen, a couple of things. Number one, that was back in November 8th. That's over 2 months ago. This team is a lot different than it was back then. The offensive line has improved dramatically. Brady has only been hit like 12 times, been sacked 12 times since that game. I mean, he's been, just sitting back in the pocket making things happen. Antonio Brown is a different element in this offense now that he's been more acclimated. So, listen, I think Brady is playing with a lot more confidence, and I get, what you guys are talking about as far as, the opponents, but I just think that this Tampa Bay offense is a different offense, has a lot more confidence than the last time they played New Orleans Saints back in over 2 months ago.
I'm inclined to agree with that. It should be pointed out the 5 teams that we're talking about, or the 5 games we're talking about, 2 of them were against Atlanta, then Minnesota, Detroit, and last week in the playoffs, Washington, who has a good defense but finished very good under 500. What do you think of this matchup that the Bucs and Brady got here?
I feel like the Saints take it as a point of pride to still be better than the Buccaneers, right? They were geared up for those 2 games this year, and they won them